What's up, y'all? I had to come back. I'm a little late, a couple days late, but I had to jump on and just share my thoughts about Jill Scott and Erykah Badu on Saturday on Verzuz. Yo, like, got my whole life, which I am sure all of us did. But just share my thoughts on just how phenomenal, right, that was, and some analysis of what we're observing, like what we're starting to see, Black folks doing, what we doing, on IG. And so I was thinking about one, just the ways in which, just how beautiful it was, like the way that they shared their love for each other, their friendship, their love of each other's work, the reverence, right, and the honor. Like I loved when Erykah Badu, read the text from her mom. It was like, my mama said, this is how ladies are supposed to act. And that sisterhood, and friendship between each other, and the ways in which we needed that, right? As a culture, as a group, as a demographic, like we needed to see that love. We needed to be reminded, of the ways in which we honor and cherish and take care of each other. I think that was super important. Listening to the way in which they shared how much they were inspired by each other, and in the past, before they knew each other, and then since they've known each other, right? And what was really, really touching and really sort of resonated so deeply for me as a cultural historian was that we've always done that too, right? We've always inspired each other in those ways, and artists have always worked together in those ways, and they've trained each other in those ways. It was something that was very central to the Harlem Renaissance, right? The other thing that I thought was like super dope was just watching, now that it's a couple days later, right? It's like watching how our culture travels, right? Like how Black culture is so dynamic, like it takes on a life of its own, or even just to the point where like now, albums that they made 20 years ago are like charting, this week, because a whole new generation of people, and probably a whole new demographics of people, are discovering and are now, downloading, buying the albums on iTunes. And it got me thinking about the ways in which, how ingenuitive we are as people, right? And so taking that like to a kind of a deeper layer at just looking at what Swiss and Timberland are doing, with Verzuz, and the ways in which we can take something, not only, do we, make a way out of no way as Black folks, but we can take something that already exists and make it do what the creators of it didn't even know that it could do, right? And watching them create that platform, like watching Swiss and D Nice and, so many of the other DJs, and just Black artists, literally, and I think Black people just kind of in general too, create an entire different functionality for Instagram, just being who we are, right? Just on our own. And so thinking about, again, all of that as a scholar, but then also thinking about it just as like a regular, like Black woman, it brought me back again to Black visual art, like what I specialize in, and the ways in which that narrative, right, and that sort of functionality of Black cultural production isn't as well known, right, to broader and more general audiences in regards to the visual arts, like it is hip hop. When you think about hip hop, particularly talking about Swiss Beats, is a major collector, of Black art, or art by Black artists. Jay-Z and Beyonce, major collectors, right? Beyonce's mother, Tina knows, major collector. And so their influence, even exists in that realm, but I think because the visual arts have kind of like operated in their own little universe, right, in their own little world, for so long, right, it's kind of hard to, or maybe let me not say hard, but it's like you don't really hear or see those narratives, talked about in pop culture as much as I think, they should be. So when you're thinking about just the ways in which, Black artists, again, we create our own platforms, or create our own spaces, or, we completely transform existing spaces. It made me think about the ways in which we don't talk about how visual artists, right, are doing that in the general, or sort of to popular audiences, right? The way that narrative, isn't talked about and discussed or sort of well known, right, as it is in regards to how we've done it in music, right? Be it the blues or jazz or soul music, of course, again, hip hop. Black artists have also done it in the visual field, right? And have been doing it, for centuries. And so thinking about that in the ways in which a lot of the people, that we're looking at right now and we're like following right now, are also major art collectors, and they support Black artists, and they support Black curators, and they support Black institutions. For me, as a curator and as a cultural historian, it was like, let me make a video about that. Let's talk about that, in regards to like this whole versus phenomenon, right? To the point where now they've actually named it, right? The versus effect. Because once these artists do, their versus night, look at what's happened for Babyface, right? After the whole him and Teddy Riley, situation. It creates, again, like it becomes a whole life of its own, right? Coachella will never be the same, right? Now that Beyonce has performed and actually implemented the performance that she gave, as it was also steeped, very much so steeped in HBCU, culture. And I think, we have to wield that more, and we have to talk about that more. I think on popular platforms like social media, where it's not just so much us like having to go take a class, right? Or like having to go to the archive, or like knowing somebody who does the work. I'm really working hard to try to popularize, right, the way that this is linear, right? Or maybe not linear in a literal sense, but like linear in an ancestral sense, right? This is tradition. It's not something that's just unique to our contemporary moment. Black artists, Black cultural producers, Black collectors, have always done these types of things. We've always created, what didn't exist, and a lot of times, what did exist, but just didn't exist for us, right? After each versus weekend, another milestone is made. So that also, lends itself to just the dynamics and just the force, right, of Black cultural production. So Erykah Badu and Jill Scott got 1 billion, right, impressions, after Saturday night's, quote unquote battle, and they've really been these celebrations, which has also been kind of cool, because I don't think any of them have been like, hostile in any kind of way, even in just like a sort of playful. I can't wait to see what the milestones will be, right, after this weekend's battle between Ludacris and Nelly. It's like, how much further, right, can we raise the bar? How much further can we push the culture? And I think that's the most exciting thing, not just as a cultural worker myself, but just as, again, like I said, just as a Black woman. It's just like super dope, to just watch, our cultural vanguard. We keep talking about, looking for political leaders or looking for those people to lead us. In a way, it's the artists. And I think historically it has always started, with the artist, before it becomes politically driven, right? Now you think about, capitalism and those type of things, like that's happening, and that's a totally different, analysis that I think is necessary, right? And I think helpful, to even understanding, their place, but just on, again, like a cultural level, I think it really is, the artists, that's pushing us forward in a different way, and so I look forward, to seeing, again, like what the milestones will be, and I look forward to seeing all of you, at the battle coming up this weekend between Nelly and Ludacris, and who knows, we may change the game all over again, because typically we always do.